Yes, guys, welcome back to 11 Yanks Breakdown for a bonus episode. This is part 2 of my conversation with David. This whole thing was originally supposed to be just one video, but there's a lot to talk about and a lot of players to keep an eye on, and David is very thorough. So we're turning this into part 2. Today, we're going to be talking about MLS guys who could end up going to Europe, right? And also doing a Q&A, some of the questions that you guys asked on Twitter. David, how are you doing, man?
I am doing great, man. Just glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Always excited to have experts, people who really know their stuff on the show. So yeah, I'm really excited to dig into it. The last, thing we did was potential MLS breakouts this season we talked about. Now we're going to talk about the next level. So these European contenders, a lot of these names are people that, a lot of guys are already familiar with and know, and some of them are even on the Olympic roster. Go ahead and walk us through it, man.
Yeah, so the last of the breakouts were just kind of newer players. Some of them could have gotten like 400 to 500 minutes, but really weren't key cogs to their team. These guys, however, everyone who watches MLS knows them. Key players. So the first one up is George Bello. So George Bello has been a name in the youth national team sphere for a long time. Has played up on national teams constantly. Atlanta United lock starter. They just withheld him from the Olympics because he's so important to their first team. He has physical tools that are fantastic. He's pretty good in the ball. He could improve a little bit before he goes to Europe, but he's pretty clean and technical. His IQ is pretty good and also could be a little bit better, but once his IQ and his ability to stay locked in for 90 minutes, this is a Bundesliga player. He's a good talent, and he's going to be one of our 3 really big left-back contenders, likely long-term, to play for the men's national team and really lock that spot down.
So, quick question for you. How do you compare George Bello with Sam Vines?
Sam Vines is a very good defender. Sam Vines is okay going forward. Against weaker competition, he's going to pretty much do what he wants, but again, weaker competition. So like when you saw him in SMNT friendlies, put some pressure on him, put really hard, tough man on his back receiving ball pressure, he's not always going to keep it.
Yeah, that's what I've noticed too. The time and space issue with him is tough. When he has less time and space, technique starts to fail,
And at higher levels, his ability to go up and down the touchline with pace isn't quite there because he isn't as athletic. He's a good player. And for an American young left back, he's still pretty promising, but George Bello, if Sam Vines ran somewhere in 4 seconds, George Bello would in 3. If you put George Bello under pressure, he's probably going to keep the ball. If you put him in 1v1 situations and a player beats him, George Bello is going to have that recovery speed to run it up and down. Sometimes in George Bello's case, it helps to be an athlete. But on top of that, he's also pretty good with his feet.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep, so I'm really high in this player. For the men's national team, he's, barring injury, he's going to be one for long term.
Good to know.
Yep. So moving on from Bello, on to another player in his age group, and one of George Bello's best friends, we have Gianluca Busio of Sporting Kansas City. So Busio has been getting MLS minutes for a while.
Yeah.
This is going to be either his 3rd or 4th season playing and getting pretty consistent minutes with the Sporting KC first team.
Yeah.
His first couple of seasons, he played more of an attacking role, more often as an attacking mid or a winger. He did okay. He kept the ball, which is great. Didn't have much of an effect on the game.
Yeah. Struggled to penetrate, I think.
Struggled to break through that back line to create chances. He scored a couple goals. Half of them, however, were from shockingly bad defending. Brutal.
Which never happens in MLS, right?
Yeah. And then Busio goes into the U17 World Cup. He's our number 10. He's our catalyst in offense and one of our playmakers. And really just didn't get the job done. He goes in the Sporting KC and MLS next. Again, plays more of a number 8/10. Really didn't see the ball much. The offense didn't run through him like it should. Didn't have an effect on the game. He got subbed out, and you can see the kid pouting on the sidelines. Just, you could tell something just wasn't working. So what does Sporting do? They move him back to the 6.
Yeah.
Because Buzio's strengths are his ability to strike the ball 40 to 60 yards on a dime with pace His IQ to keep the ball and to read the game when he has the ball, and to really channel that ball from defense to attack. So KC said, we want to make this kid control the game.
Yeah.
We want to make him be not our playmaker, but our metronome. And right away, he didn't just do a good job. He did a great job there.
Yeah.
He really came into his own. He pushed out lock starters for Sporting KC, and he became a 17, 18-year-old starter every single game in MLS. He became the player that from years before, when you heard of like $3 to $4 million transfer rumors, he looked like that player, and he looked like he deserved it. So now coming into this season, Busio needs to take that step from good prospect and good starter to cornerstone and key player on his team.
Yeah,
he needs to be that player that if he's not in the team, they're not winning the game.
What are your thoughts about him being left off the Olympic qualifying roster?
I'm fine with it. When you look at the sixes, Johnny Cardoso, Andres Perea, Jackson Newell.
The different kinds of sixes. Andres Perea is more of a ball-winning six. He's not really a ball-playing six that much.
Yeah. And personally, in my opinion, he's not as good as those players are, but he's also much younger.
Yeah.
The closest one to him is Johnny Cardoso, who's probably our most talented six in the pool. So it's not a slight on Busio to not make it at all. He's still eligible for 2024. More likely than not, if he's still somehow in MLS, he's going to be the first name on that team sheet. He's going to be carrying that team. It's not exactly a slight on him to not make it. To be a player to play up in a cycle that's a 4-year cycle, so he would have been playing up technically 6 years with this group. Even in consideration as a 2002 is a huge deal.
Yeah,
and that's a huge batch of talent for the kid. So,
and the fact that we can leave a guy like Busio off when this is already probably our third best under 23 team. 4 years ago, Busio would have been the first name on that team sheet. Yeah. So like the amount of depth and quality that we've developed over the years is impressive.
Yep. 4 years ago, we started Will Trapp in his role. Will Trapp was about to come into his peak as a player and was good, but he was about the same level of Busio. And Will Trapp was almost 22 at that time.
Right.
Busio turns 19 this year.
Yeah.
Kid has talent.
Yeah.
So he's going to be one that I think he goes off to Europe in the next year.
Cool.
So enough on Busio. Now on to a kid who isn't just potentially off to Europe. He already has been sold to Europe, and that's Kaden Clark.
Yes.
So Kaden Clark is going to be the youngest player that we talk about in this group. He's born in 2003. But this kid came into the league kind of as a homegrown, was from Minnesota territory, so Red Bulls bought his rights from Minnesota. He played in USL and did good. He had games where he kind of disappeared. He had games where he absolutely lit it on fire, but you could see that toolkit. You could see the skill set for the potential. Comes into MLS, first game, hits a volley for a banger. It's like, oh, okay. That's what this kid can do. Second game, gets the ball, feeds in about 25 yards out, checks the shoulder, makes a good first touch, scores a 25-yard screamer with his weak foot. The entire country knew who this kid was after that.
Yeah. Yes, they did.
Yep. So Caden is an attacking mid who can also play as a winger, but realistically his future is in the middle as a number 10.
For sure. His
IQ is phenomenal. His ability to read the play and find those spaces, make penetrating balls, put the goalie on notice.
Yeah, what I find really impressive about Caden is that he combines elite technique and intelligence with the physical tools, right? Sometimes teenagers at that age, especially the playmaking types, are a little small physically and a little pushed off the ball a little too easily, but that's not the case with Caden.
Nope, it's not. And there is a reason for this. So Caden's a little bit more fortunate than most kids. His dad is a personal trainer.
Yes.
Dad constantly works with this kid to work on his athleticism, to work on his physique, to make sure he's ready for that pro level.
Yes.
So it's no coincidence that this kid at 17 can physically handle the rigors of of a pretty physical MLS league.
Yeah.
But he's great with both feet. He can score from deep. He can find those penetrating balls. He can put a keeper on notice. He can punish a back line for any mistakes. He can do it all as an attacking midfielder. So this is a kid that's not just Germany potential. This is a Champions League potential player we're talking about. He's going to go to Leipzig. Now, is he going to get minutes at 18 to 19?
We'll see.
We'll see. That's a pretty hard team. We're seeing how Tyler Adams is still not locked down a guaranteed role.
Yeah.
But this is a kid long term.
How do you compare Kaden Clark to Brendan Aronson in terms of style of play, ceiling, stuff like that?
I would say Kaden Clark is more lethal. They both have pretty similar styles of play. They buzz around, they get on the ball. They just are a constant menace to the other team. They're finding ways, and they're just flashy as they go about it too. But Brendan Aronson is going to be 21 this year.
Yeah.
And Clark is going to be as good as Brendan is at 19.
Yeah, probably.
So he's a lot further ahead than Brendan was. Now, will he get as far as Brendan? Brendan's killing it in Europe right now, getting it done in EuroLeague, getting it done in Salzburg. Could be another kid Leipzig take a look at.
Yeah.
But if the kid keeps his head on straight, this is a Champions League player. From there, now to talk about two LA Galaxy players. The first one is the older one, and that's Julian Araujo. So Julian is a right back who can also play as a right winger or a right center back, but long term is going to be in that fullback spot. He is not the tallest player, but he's just sturdy, stocky, and an absolute brute of a defender. He doesn't just like going into tackles. He makes sure that he times it well enough that he can go in there with extra force to really pack more of a punch into it. Just loves that part of the game. He's an excellent defender. Just really good at it. Going forward, he's good. Like Sam Vines, he's not exactly great at it. It's not his strong suit. But he's getting better than what he was before. Growing up, he would play sometimes as a center back. He plays a winger. He would play as a 6. And then eventually, when he got to Barca Academy, they stuck him at right back. And they're like, okay, this kid has talent. And then Galaxy were like, we're going to bring this kid in now.
It's very strange to me that the Galaxy used him as a winger last year because it doesn't really feel like his strongest position.
I feel like they were trying to develop his ability to play up going forward. Because they know this kid's going to Europe, but they know that going forward, I mean, he's good in offense. He can connect well. He can serve a good final ball. But when you put this kid against really high-level players, he's going to be a good defender. He's going to lock players down. He locked down Justin Kluivert. And that guy was playing at Roma at the time. Julian shut the dude down with no problem. But going forward, he didn't make much of an impact in games going against truly talented players. So that's where he really needs to improve.
Yeah.
And when he does, Germany's going to come calling for him. And he's going to be another player who's probably going to be a long-term player in the Bundesliga. So now moving into another LA Galaxy teenager, and one who is currently in the middle of a dual national battle between the United States and Mexico. That is Efrain Alvarez.
Yes, sir.
Yep, the golden gem of the LA Galaxy / Chiva America / Barca LA Academies. Efra has been a player since 13 years old. Everyone knew this kid was going places. He has the brain for the sport. And also, this kid can do things in the ball no one else can. He was at 15 years old scoring goals that made me watch it 10 times. And just saying, how the hell did this 15-year-old just do that against men?
Yeah. And he can use any part of either feet to create, to distribute, to score. It's unbelievable, really.
Yeah, he's just when you look at a kid and he's just like, this is what a God-gifted talent on the ball is, that's Efrain Alvarez. There's just this kid, whether he worked hard for it, whether he didn't, he's gifted for the game. And he's just born with this ball at his foot like this. Now, where Efra has to improve this year is he needs, like Busio, to take over the team. To not just be a starter, be a vital player. Be a player who your team has to have in that field to win games.
Yeah.
At the youth levels, that's what he was.
Yeah.
If Mexico took him off, Mexico wasn't going to do well. If LA Galaxy Academy took him off, they weren't going to win the game. When he played for the USA youth national teams, if they took him off, the offense fell apart.
Yeah.
He needs to show that he can do this at the pro level.
So where do you think his position is? Is he a right winger or is he more of a 10 or even of a second forward?
He's a
because
10.
he doesn't do a lot of work defensively, I've noticed.
Yeah, so Efra, as a youth player, never really had to run. He was a player that is just so gifted, you can't take this kid off the field.
Yeah.
So they kind of let him get away with being a little lazier on defense.
Yeah.
But he made up for it by putting in a goal a game or creating some assist that no other kid in the field could even think about trying.
Yeah.
So going to the Mexico youth teams and the Galaxy didn't work quite as well. You need to show a little more commitment to the team defensively. Efra's starting to do that.
Yeah.
It
was better last season.
Yep, it was better. He's starting to work his tail off to really recover defensively. The issue with Efra is he isn't the fastest player.
Yeah.
Athletically, we'll put him at a 2 out of 10. Not very athletic player. He's short and he's slow.
Yeah.
But if you can build this team around him, you can put 2 very ground-covering, ball-winning midfielders with him.
Yeah.
This is going to change the game for you. Yeah.
Sorry. I even think of him as like a super sub possibility in the future. You know, even if maybe you don't think he's ready for 90 minutes at an elite level, maybe when you need a goal, it's like, you know what? We bring on Efra and you give him that space to roam behind the striker and see what he can do.
Mm-hmm. Just Efra for me has to play centrally. No choice about it. You need this in the middle of the field where he can have the most effect on the game offensively.
Yeah.
Him at right winger where he's not going to excel 1v1. He's not going to do a great job helping out the right back.
No.
It's not exactly where I think he's best suited. Now, will it work for an MLS level? Yes. But if Efra spends his career in MLS, that's a failure because this kid is more talented than that.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Yeah. So Efra needs to show that he can be an MLS all-star level attacker and just a special player. And if you can do that, this kid is Europe bound. I think if he goes to Spain, I think he'll have a wonderful career.
Yeah, that seems to suit him there.
Yeah. So now on to number 6 on our list, which is Colorado Rapids players. First one up is the older one, Sam Vines. So like we talked about Sam earlier, great defender, lockdown. Came in as one of his first games in MLS, shut down Carlos Vela.
Yes.
Pretty hard thing to do against one of the best players ever stepped foot in MLS.
Yeah.
Great player. Going forward, he's good. He's not elite, but he's good. So Sam Vines needs to show that when he's under pressure, he's going to keep that ball. If 2 or 3 players come after him, he's going to be able to find his way out of it, find his way out of pressure, find a man, or put pressure on the back line and really start that attack. He needs to show that for 90 minutes against a very good team, he can work up and down that sideline, really just keeping and being an option offensively for us. Defensively sound. He doesn't get beat very often, and he's consistent too, which young players often struggle with. But he needs to show that against high-level players, he can keep it up. for 90
I'm
minutes.
very curious to see him against Mexico in the under-23 Olympic qualifiers, because he will probably start with no George Bello.
Yeah.
He's going to start most of those games, if not all of them.
Yeah,
I want to see how he reacts defensively to Mexico.
Yeah. The only way Sam Vines doesn't start is if he's out with yellow cards or he's hurt.
Yeah. Or he needs a rest.
Yeah. I don't think we can afford that with a 20-man team, sadly.
You know, it'll be interesting is the first 2 games in the Olympic qualifiers will be Dominican Republic and Costa Rica. So we may have already qualified by the time we play Mexico. Yep. And then they might say, okay, we're going to rest the guys against Mexico and just focus on winning that semi because the final doesn't matter, you know?
Yep. So Mexico is going to be a determination point for Sam Vines. It's going to show him, are you up for it or do you need to go back and work?
Yeah.
Sam Vines has shown that he'll work his ass off. He'll work to improve. He's going to grind for it. Mexico's going to show just how far off are you from being a player who's good enough for Europe. Because Mexico's going to bring their A team, with exception of maybe 2 or 3 players in Europe. They're bringing it. So he's going to go up against guys who, if he's on the USMNT, he's going up against players who are going to be in that team for the next 10 to 12 years.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's time for him to show it. So moving from Sam Vines onto our other Colorado player, and that's Cole Bassett. Cole has been a player who has gotten pretty consistent minutes later on the MLS season, as he showed that he's a player who, more often than not, if he's on the field, he's going to help you win the game. He wasn't key for Colorado Rapids, but he was more of a pro than he was a con, which for a player who's 18 years old, we'll take it.
Yeah.
So Cole is a center mid.
Like 4 goals and 5 assists or something last year?
For a number 8, really productive.
Yeah.
Great season. He's a box-to-box mid who can cover ground pretty well.
Yeah.
Pretty sturdy defensively. He's a good passer. Not a great one, but good one. And for a number 8 in the final third, like we kind of hinted at earlier, he's pretty productive.
I remember a U20 friendly with Mexico. I think it was the first game that he played for the U20s, and he scored twice for a 2-0 win against Mexico.
He did. He also, in the first U20 camp before that, he was the leading scorer as well.
Oh, okay. It was.
So the kid, for a center mid, really productive in front of goal.
Yeah.
Which is great to see, because this says he has something that's going to set him apart from a normal center mid in the eyes of a Europe team. That's important. You can't just be a center mid who helps just connect the field. You have to have something else in your game that separates you. And Cole does. So now he needs to show that he has to maintain clean touches for a 90-minute time frame. Clean, reduce your turnovers, be efficient for a full 90 minutes.
Yeah.
If he can do that, he's probably going to go off to the numerous German teams who are wanting this kid.
Yeah. Didn't he train with Arsenal as well last year?
Trained with Arsenal. I want to say he trained with someone in Germany, if it's maybe Freiburg. No, they're interested in him. I think he might have trained over there.
I heard Freiburg as well.
He trained with some.
Yeah.
But he's a grinder. He's going to work his tail off on the field, but he's still pretty good on the ball, but he's not elite on the ball. But he's still very young. Can he become a player who's like most of the Bundesliga midfielders, who can cover a ton of ground, who can keep that ball more often than not, and who can really make things happen 2 to 3 times a game in that final third?
Yeah.
He needs to show he can be one of those type of players.
Mm-hmm.
If he can, this next season, he's going to Europe. With the interest this kid has, and with the showcase that he's going to have on a global scale with the Olympics, with the next Olympics, things like that, he's going to go to Europe at some point.
Yeah.
It's not an if, it's a when.
It's crazy that he's probably going to be – I don't know if you think he's going to be on the final 20-man Olympic roster. He is on the 28-man roster. But even if he's not, the fact that this guy is eligible for the next Olympics is crazy.
It is.
Him, Araujo, a ton of these guys are eligible for the next Olympic.
It's crazy how much talent we have that's available for that. Generally in the cycle, you have 2 to 3 kids who are below that age group, and it's a 4-year cycle. For right now, it's 97s to 2000s.
Yeah.
But generally, you have 2 or 3 kids who are able to play up. For the USA last time, it was Cameron Carter-Vickers, Eric Palmer-Brown, and Gideon Zelalem.
Yeah.
Eric Palmer-Brown's doing well. CCV, tragic. And Gideon Zelalem had some very unfortunate injuries. That kid could have been something. But generally, you have 2 or 3 of those.
Yeah.
We have like 25 of them who are good enough to play up. That's a big deal.
Yes.
And realistically,
be understated for sure.
It shouldn't be. And our cycle after that, our 05s to 08s,
even better.
They're deeper and better.
Wow.
So, and the U.S. soccer system's still figuring out how to function. We still have clubs realizing that youth development is a thing.
It's going to be nuts. We're going to have Americans peppered all over Europe in a couple of years. I mean, we already do, but it's going to be even more. Like they're going to be like Brazilians, I think, where you find them even at like smaller clubs. There's always 2 or 3 Brazilians, right?
Now that MLS is participating in the global marketplace, and there's going to be more of those teams too. Right now, we're seeing 10 to 12 academies really start to pump kids into that first team.
Yeah.
Soon, in 5 years, it's going to be 20.
Yeah.
5 years after that, it's going to be 30.
Yeah.
10 years after that, as Don Garber keeps adding teams to the league, it's probably going to be 35 to 40.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be, kids are going to pop up out of nowhere, and there's going to be a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's going to be constant. So moving on from that, let's talk about another Olympic eligible player, and that's another center mid and Tanner Tessman. So Tanner is one of the FC Dallas kids who's realistically has his eyes set on Europe. Super talented player. Pretty similar to Cole Bassett. But Tanner is a player who athletically covers more ground than Cole does.
Yeah.
However, he's not as efficient in the final third as Cole is. But Tanner is better defensively.
Yes.
So you would play one or the other depending on the type of team you play. If you need to beat a team that's bunkering, I'm probably going with Cole Bassett. You need to go play against a team that's better than you, I'm probably bring Tanner Tessman. But Tanner is 6'1" to 6'2", stocky kid, really thick, just glides around the field. Super athletic, super smooth, and he's also good in the ball. He can hit.
That's what's interesting about him, because you look at Tanner, you're like, this is going to be a tough tackling midfielder, but he's so smooth in possession, you know.
Smooth. He has fast feet. His touch is good. His passes are good. They're weighted right. Doesn't happen a lot of those big center mids. I mean, this is a kid that even Dabo Swinney, who works with literally like mind-blowing athletes daily, is like, this kid's athletic as hell. It's a big vouch. Now, might have been a little bit of a fluff because they're family friends and that's his godfather.
Yeah.
But to even say that this kid's one hell of an athlete from a guy who's the coach of one of the best college football programs, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
When you look at how the game is going, you're seeing teams translate to, can we get athletic, controlling center mids who are going to help us win that game and control it for 90 minutes? That's what Tanner Tessman is. He's going to do it efficiently as a 6 or an 8. He's going to do it for a long time.
Where do you think he's better, as a 6 or an 8?
I think he's better as an 8.
Okay.
Because realistically, distribution-wise, he's good. But for his style of play, you need to be great. You need to be able to get that ball, turn, scan the field, know what you're going to do with it, and hit a 40 to 50-yard ball accurately every single time. Tanner can't do that yet. He can take a couple touches and then hit it, but it's not automatic. And that's what you need to be if you're going to be the style of 6. That's not a just crunching lockdown defender Tyler Adams type. So now moving into our next player, and that is NYCFC 6/center back James Sands, who, in my opinion, is the most underrated player in the American youth system. Constantly snubbed, and I hate it. You want to look for a kid who's versatile, who's good enough to make our Olympic teams. This is it. As a center back, he's one of NYFC's best center backs. Lockdown, strong, smart, great positioning. As a 6, he's an amazing destroyer who can also distribute pretty well. His positioning's flawless. The kid just has the book of soccer in his head. But James needs to be, again, like some of these other guys, a player who goes from good starter to vital piece of the team. They lose you, team falls apart.
Yeah.
He has that potential. And the other big thing with James Sands is that NYCFC has the incentive to sell him. If you look at their number 6 pool, Justin Hawk is there. Tavon Bray can play too. They have replacements there. If you look even further than those guys, you have Marca Marca, who's one of the best 6 prospects in the country. If you look to the center back pool, you have a couple kids who are really good. Cameron Aceto's not going to stay at college at Wake Forest for very long. That kid's going to go. He's a 2004, is really good. Same with Prince Amponsa, who's a 2003, also at Wake Forest. Very good player. Going down from there, Alex Hoshile is a 2006 center back who's a beast of a player. They also have a 2007 Christian McFarlane, who's also a phenomenal center back. So in both of James Sands' positions, there are kids coming up.
Yeah.
It's time for NYFC to mirror those teams in Europe and move this kid on to the higher level.
Yeah.
Because you need to profit off of this kid. He's good enough to. Generally, in situations like this, the best clubs take these talented kids and move them on when the next one's ready. It's going to happen sooner rather than later. NYCFC is bringing Marca Marca to preseason. That kid's going to get a vision of what do I need to do to get to the first team. It's not going to take that kid very long. He's a killer.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I've really been impressed with him. I saw him the first time for when Patrick Vieira was in charge. And since then, he's been playing for NYC.
Yeah. Just James Sands he's a great player. He's been in the U.S. youth system for a very long time. Consistently been one of the most talented center backs or defensive mids.
I kind of hope he can turn into a center back because that's where we still don't have elite talents, that are very young. So I'm kind of hoping we can turn him into a center back and he can be in the Richards McKenzie age group, for long term.
I hope we can. I'm not sure we can because I don't see him being as high level of a center back as I do a 6.
He's just got a lot more competition in that 6 spot than he does at center back.
Yeah, he does. He might be the best player to never make the national team.
You don't think he'll ever get a call up, not even a January camp?
He'll get January camps, things like that, but serious first string rosters. He's going to be one of those that performs time and time again. A Lee Win type. People like that who or an Iko Para, people like that who are just amazing players.
Yeah.
Call never comes. When it's in a time of need, qualifying, World Cup, Gold Cup, phone never rings despite him performing.
Yeah.
But the kid is still a great player. We're going to see more of this kid as our development system becomes more efficient. It's going to go. So now bringing into a kid who he's going to be one of the oldest players we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But the talent level is just there that we have to talk about.
Yeah.
That is Paxton Pomykal. So every single person who's found this video probably knows who Paxton is.
Yeah.
So talented center mid or attacking mid. He's another player like Brendan Aronson and Kaden Clark who can just buzz around the field and do literally everything. Paxton's going to be one of the best ball winners on the field. He's going to be one of the best players in the final third of the field. He's going to be one of the best passers on the field. He's going to be one of the hardest players to get the ball off of his foot. This kid does everything. And he also moves around the field really well, too. And his pace is really underrated. He can play as a winger and still dominate the game because of it.
Yeah.
Just plain and simple, among any age group, we don't really have this many this kid talents. He went into the U20 World Cup against France unfazed, played his ass off. We won the game.
Yeah.
One of those type kids. For FC
He's
Dallas,
just so good at so many things. Every time I watch him, I'm like, is there anything this kid can't do? And maybe going 1v1 on the wing, he doesn't have that explosive pace that a Pulisic has. But take that aside, I don't think there's anything this can't do with or without the ball.
the only thing that he's going to struggle with is headers, and that's because he's like 5'.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Outside of that, this kid does everything. You
Yeah.
can play him as a 10, he's going to do great. You can play him as an 8, which I think is what his long-term position is. He's
Yeah,
going to be the best one in the field. You can play him as a 6, and he's still going to be amazing.
yeah,
It's just the issue with Paxton is the kid's body just isn't cooperating with him.
no,
He's constantly hurt.
yeah,
Constantly. You're going to have situations like this. John O'Brien had it happen to him. Amazingly talented player. Always hurt.
yeah.
Stuart Holden got broken by other players. But again,
Yeah.
we're a super talented player. That just injuries ruined him.
Yeah,
Paxton's healthy right now. I pray to the Lord every single night that this kid can stay healthy. Because he's so good.
yeah. I just watched Dallas games just for Paxton. I mean, I watched for all of them, but when Paxton's the one I'm watching him. Even when the ball's on the other side of the field, I'm just watching Paxton. You know,
like Jesus Herrera doesn't come close to Paxton's talent. Brandon Cervania can't shine Paxton's shoes.
No.
I think Paxton even blows away Ricardo Pepi in talent. It's just,
oh yeah, I agree.
Paxton's just, he's an amazing player. Just the kid loves the game of soccer, oozes swagger, oozes confidence, and just can do everything on the field at a high level.
Yeah.
So if he can stay healthy, we're gonna see him in the Champions League.
I agree.
He's a player who people thought, yeah, he's probably going to be better than Weston McKennie. Now
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Now Weston McKennie's at Juventus. If Weston's doing that, and not just a couple people, this was a pretty widely held viewpoint. That is my expectations for Paxton. He's a USMNT level player in our best position.
Mm-hmm.
Just amazing talent. No other thing I can say about it. So now on to another older player and a player that's had European interest. This is Real Salt Lake's Aaron Herrera. So Aaron's a good player. He works hard. He's okay in the ball. He's pretty good defensively. He might be pretty close to his talent level, but for those who don't watch the lower level games in some big leagues in Europe, they're not pretty. There are Aaron Herrera's out there. This kid has interest from Europe for a reason. There are teams that he is good enough to play on. So nothing really more, nothing really less. He's a good player. He's not going to be a men's national team player. He's just not. He's better and younger. But he'll probably get to Europe. It won't be on a very high level team, but it could be a lower level Serie A team. Maybe. That fits him. That's good enough.
Yeah, maybe.
Not as high as people think that he couldn't.
Yeah. It's tough with him because we haven't really seen him at an elite level because he plays in MLS. So it's really hard sometimes to gauge what he would do, particularly in possession of the ball. You know, when you're trying to build out of the back and you've got an intense high press from a top European side. I think he'll struggle there technically. But you're right. Against a lower team that does a lot of defending, maybe, I can see that being a possibility.
Yeah, and like a lot of players that we've preached with the mentality aspect, this is a kid who went from the by far worst in RSL's class of 97 with him, Justin Glad, Sebastian Saucedo, Danilo Acosta.
Yeah.
Herrera. He went from noticeably the worst one. Now he's the best one.
Yeah.
Not by accident. He knows his weaknesses and he works on them. Now, is he going to ever be extremely high level at any parts of his game? No, but for some of those lower level teams in Europe, the ones where it's going to honestly, it's going to be painful to watch them.
Yeah.
He can play for a couple of those. And we have quite a bit who can.
Yeah.
So now on to a second division player who's currently in Europe on loan. Everyone knows him. Everyone loves him. One of the best personalities in the USA soccer pool, Daryl Dike. To just tankety tank. To just absolute monster striker. He's like 6'2", literally
He
built.
looks taller somehow. Like they say 6'2", but when you see him on the field, he looks like a giant.
He looks taller. Dude's built like a classic Greek god Olympian type person. Just he looks like Zion Williamson, LeBron James type, just absolute monster of a player. That helps his game. Center backs can't get the ball off of him because he can outmuscle the center backs.
Yeah.
He's also very fast for his size, which makes him even harder to play against. So he still has the soccer IQ part of the game to work on. He can still be more technical.
Yeah.
But when you're his level of athlete, you're damn hard to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
sometimes
like
you can just run through players.
Yeah.
You just have to go through.
Yeah, he can literally run through them, even high-level center backs.
Yeah.
Like, realistically, he's going to be the biggest and strongest player on the field until he goes up against like a Liverpool or Virgil van Dijk's out there.
Yeah. He's only scored one goal for Barnsley so far, but I was watching that goal and I was particularly impressed with his movement. Like the goal was well taken, it was a tight angle and he placed it well. But his movement and the timing of his movement to get in behind the back line in a diagonal way and then turn the ball over to the other side of the goal was really impressive. I liked his movement a lot,
It's something that I was a little bit hesitant on at Virginia when he was at Virginia and a little bit when he was at Orlando. But Europe is very attentive to detail.
Yeah.
And I can imagine they're working on him with it very often. Once he gets that timing down, he gets that when to move, and he cleans up his touches a little bit. Kind of has a lead foot still. Once he cleans that up, he's going to be a force in whatever team he plays in. Up until like your monster clubs, he's going to go to any league that values a really athletic player. He's just going to be fantastic.
Yeah, he could even make a championship career out of just, bullying defenders and maybe even a lower level Premier League team.
He could. There's a lot of lower level Premier League guys that are really similar to him.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're a pretty much, we'll call him a budget Romelu Lukaku.
That's what I was going to say. The poor man's like Lukaku, yeah.
That's still good enough for 60 of 100 top level teams or top 5 league teams.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, he has the skill set and the potential to go really far. So now on to someone who has the skill set for the Champions League. That's Jonathan Gomez. So Jonathan Gomez isn't in an MLS academy. He's at Louisville City in USL.
Mm-hmm.
I would be shocked if he's not starting every game. Jonathan Gomez had some issues at FC Dallas of when his brother left. They're pretty picky on making sure they can keep him. And when he showed signs of leaving, was played at levels realistically lower than his game. He was played at his own age group, which is good enough. And he was only offered a North Texas deal versus a homegrown deal because realistically at the time he wasn't going to fight for Dallas minutes. Not yet.
Yeah.
Have to be realistic. But when you look for a well-rounded left back who's good at every aspect of actually being a left back, that's Jonathan Gomez. On the ball, one of our most skilled players among any age group in the youth pool. Defensively, lockdown, athletically, fast, strong for his age. IQ, he could play as a 6 and be amazing. He can play as a left back. Good enough IQ as a center back. Every aspect of his game, except him not being a very tall player, is very high level and has the potential to be extremely high level. So among our left backs in the USA pool, he has the highest ceiling. And this only is in play if Kobe Hernandez-Foster stays as a 6 at Wolfsburg.
Right.
If Kobe plays as a left back or plays as a 6, Jonathan Gomez is our highest level left back prospect. That means
Do you think it's possible that Kobe will play as a 6 for Wolfsburg, but when he comes to the U.S., play as a left back just because of the lack of options,
I think that is possible.
especially in CONCACAF, where his lack of elite pace isn't going to be as much of a problem?
Yeah. Kobe has to show that he can get past the U19 Wolfsburg level. He's doing pretty good there, but he's playing as a 6 because they're worried about his ability to athletically affect the game at that left back spot. But Kobe's ability to distribute the ball all over the field and his vision, as well as his ability to break up plays, absurdly good. Just no one else has that. Jonathan Gomez is literally great everywhere in his game.
Yeah.
Not a weak point. He's going to be one of the best left backs in USL this season. And he's going to turn 18 in September.
Yeah.
Just fantastic prospect. Because of the World Cup being later in November, he's still one who could break into the USMNT.
That would be interesting.
If he can get to the right team.
Yeah.
And every single team from Germany and Portugal are looking at him.
Yeah.
As they should. I think he's going to go to Porto where his older brother is. Good. If they sell a couple guys, he could break into that team. But he's such a talented player.
So we're talking about him being Anthony Robinson's backup at Qatar, basically, right?
Yeah.
Unless he's so good that he pushes Anthony Robinson. I think it's unlikely he's going to push Anthony Robinson.
I don't think it's likely. When you look for what a Greg Berhalter wants out of his left back, he fits that role better than Anthony does. But he's also 6 years younger than Anthony.
Yeah.
At the 2022 World Cup, he's going to be 19. It's a young kid. It's a young kid in a World Cup spot as a defender.
Yeah.
2026, he's my bet to be the starter. And that's including over Anthony, over George Bello, over Sam Vines, even over Kobe. He's my bet currently. He's a massive talent.
Yeah.
We don't have many like this in any position of this kid's skill, IQ, defending, everything. So now on to the player at the U20 level for 2023 is going to be his complement on the other side of the field, and that's Mauricio Cuevas. So Mauricio currently is in LA Galaxy 2, where he was one of the best right backs in USL. Also was a free kick dynamo. Buried them all the time, and they were beauties. He can swing in a better final ball and a better cross than almost any right back in the pool. The kid is saucy on the ball. Just slick, skilled. He has his eyes set on Europe, so he recently fired an agent and signed with Gary Cliven, who represents Ulianes, Alex Mendez, Kobe, and a lot of the guys who left LA Galaxy for Europe.
Yeah.
Because of this, it's not very hard to guess what's going to happen with this kid.
Yeah.
He's going to Europe in June. Or not in June.
Is he going to Wolfsburg, you think, or do you think they're going to move on from Wolfsburg?
I mean, Gary's placed players at other clubs. He placed Alex Mendez at Freiburg.
That's true.
He could even send him to Holland. Now, Holland, he'd have to get paid a lot more money than Germany because Holland would have to pay around $250,000 a year, while in Germany, he's probably going to get paid $35,000 a year. So it all depends on where he's going to go, but he's going to Europe. And in our next U20s, which is 2003s and 04s, and maybe a special 05, but we're not going to talk about that kid for now. Mauricio is chiseled in stone like the Ten Commandments into that starting line. Yeah. Unless this kid's leg gets chopped off, no one is surpassing him.
Yeah. I agree.
Amazing player. And now
what his free kicks are just out of this world. Incredible.
They're beautiful. They really are. I mean, you'd love to see a kid who's that good at free kicks. He might be better than Alex Mendez, and I'm at it. It's just automatic. And he's putting it in places where not even the top goalies in the world are going to save it.
Yeah.
Because the goalie is going to go from where he's standing to covering the literal top corner of the goal. And
Yeah.
Mauricio's putting them there every time.
Yeah.
At will. And he's just going to keep doing it. So now from Mauricio on to our final USL kid, our final kid in this list, and that's Jose Gallegos of San Antonio. So Jose is a player who many people have wondered, is he going to go to MLS or is he going to go to Europe? He currently plays in San Antonio, probably is going to be a number 10 long term, but he can also play as a winger. Just another player who just does everything really well that you would want your number 10 to do. His movement's smart. He's dangerous on the ball. He doesn't just pick apart defenses, he dissects them.
Mm-hmm.
He does heart surgery to them. And he's constantly doing it. And he was one of the most talented players in USL, and he popped off the screen every single time he was on the field. This is a kid that realistically I was surprised to see him not get sold to Europe.
Yeah, same.
And if he was playing in MLS, and we know he can because he scrimmaged against FC Dallas's first stringers, kid destroyed.
Yeah,
Like,
I remember that game.
You watched it, and it was just every single time this kid was on the ball, he was making the FC Dallas starting defenders look like kids.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And Jose Gallegos is also going to be a little bit of a rarity because he's going to be one of the final players in the men's soccer system to not play in the DA or MLS Next or in college soccer, but still make it to the highest level.
Yeah.
He played high school soccer.
Yeah, I remember that. Won a state championship too.
Yeah, last winter he won state, which a player of his skill should. He carried the team on his back, scored like 2 goals a game and won it, which is just, I couldn't imagine going up against a kid like that in high school. But yeah, he didn't play DA. San Antonio had DA teams, never took part in it. They signed this kid out of high school soccer. And what a signing he's been. He's a must start for San Antonio this year in every game. In a really San Antonio is a great team.
Yeah.
They released their roster yesterday for their preseason. It's good. There's some really talented former youth players in that team. There's just some great midfielders and attackers in that group. He's the best one, is one of the youngest players. So now it's a question of where does he go? So people have talked about him going to the Netherlands. But the issue with that is if you're a player without an EU passport, which is a European Union passport, you have to get paid a premium compared to the actual European players. So for every non-Europe guy you have, instead of paying him $100,000 a year, you have to almost pay him around $430,000 to $450,000 per year.
Yeah.
The issue with that is European clubs are not quite funded, or most European clubs aren't funded like the teams that you watch every weekend, or like some MLS clubs are. They don't have the billionaires behind them. They don't have people from Saudi Arabia, Russia, all those countries where it's just money flows. Outside of like your Ajax, your PSV, your Feyenoord, your Aussie Alkmaar.
Yeah.
Many teams can afford to bring in a non-EU player. It's great if you're Dutch. It's really bad if you are.
Yeah.
So,
and it's also what keeps the Dutch league from really competing on a global scale.
It does.
And having to remain a selling league.
Yep. And this is also a thing that plagues most countries. It's also why our talent always goes to Germany. And that's because the other country, almost every other country, has some type of restriction in place for players not from Europe.
Yeah.
And this was also partially designed because I don't want to name clubs, but clubs in Spain were going over to Brazil and Argentina, taking kids and paying them $1,000 a month. And 70% of those kids would not make it. And then they were pretty much stuck in Europe because they couldn't afford to fly home.
Isn't that insane? That's crazy.
Yeah. So Europe's like, we need to place some work restrictions to stop this from happening.
Yeah.
And then outside of that, it also benefits the players in Europe too, because they don't have to worry about competing with a lot of these guys who aren't from there. It's not like Germany, where if you aren't killing it in your position, they're going to bring in a South American, an African, or an American who's going to take your spot.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to worry about that. That's why we don't see players go to France, Spain, or England a lot.
Yeah.
They have restrictions put in place of it. But
Yeah.
I see Jose going to probably a team in Germany. Probably if he does go over, it's going to be a second-tier league team or a two Bundesliga team. And he's going to kill it. And he's going to be really good. And he's probably going to get bought by a team that's in the Bundesliga. That is my hope for him. And that's my expectations. He's just a great talent.
Shall we move on to some listener questions? Is that it for the players?
That is it.
Yeah, so you put this on Twitter, and I think I put it as well, just asking for random questions from people. Yeah. Do we want to go straight from top to bottom? The first one coming from Evan Gilkey.
Which players currently in MLS youth academies, so not signed to the first team, will be the next big thing for U.S. soccer? There's two of them. Easy question. 2006 born Matthew Corcoran. Even with Weston McKennie, Paxton, Pomykal, players like that, Matthew Corcoran's the most talented kid I've ever seen. If this kid stays healthy, he's Champions League bound. He already has Champions League teams after him. And he's a 2006. He's gone. Buzz, who runs Third Degree, had a scout in Mexico DM him, freaking out about this kid because he was so good. Everywhere he goes, people are like, who is this kid? We have to get him. Mm-hmm. Thanks to FC Dallas's partnership with Bayern Munich, I'm fairly confident he's going to be the first player to truly break in at Bayern from USA. He has that talent level. When you look for a defensive mid who literally has every aspect of the game down, this is it. He's just a wonder. There's two others that I think are at that, not quite at his talent level, but are still in that, we'll say, Reina tier. First one is Natty Clark. So Natty's at Sporting Kansas City. He can play center back. He can play right back. He can play 6. Due to his size, I don't think he's going to be taller than 5'8" or 5'9". He's probably going to be right back.
Okay.
Another player who's just a freak athlete, but at the same time, incredibly skilled on the ball for his age. Good defender too, but just blazes up and down the field with ease. Just bypasses kids like they're turnstiles because he's so good on the ball. He can also hit free kicks well. He can drive balls across the field at 15 years, 16 years old. Mm-hmm. He's probably going to be the next really, really big player to come out of Sporting Kansas City's academy. He's also the player who Jalen Lindsay should be terrified of because this kid's going to keep Jalen Lindsay from locking the right back spot down. Mm-hmm. But Natty's just nuts talent. The final one is a 2007, and his name is Axel Perez. So when Inter Miami launched their academy, they did jersey sponsorships, things like this. Axel Perez was that kid who was in every single marketing video. They're already pushing this kid the way that Gio Reyna got a commercial at 15 years old.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Axel play at a level that's less than 2 years above his age group. And the thing that's notable about this is that he's not playing up because he's physically ready for it. Realistically, he's not physically ready for it. Mm-hmm. He's just so skilled in the ball and so smart that it's legitimately not fair to play him against kids his own age.
Right.
He's an attacking midfielder. He's a classic 10. He's one that is he's a killer. If he gets that ball and has any bit of space, even at his age, a goal's happening. Even if he's playing against kids 2 to 3 years older than him and are hitting puberty while he hasn't. So once this kid grows, and this kid also has a Spanish passport, so he's Europe bound at 16. Huge deal. This is another kid who could have that Pulisic Reina breakout, and is just wonderfully talented. So mentally and physically, if he can keep injury free and he can keep his head down and keep progressing like he has.
Yeah.
This is who we could be looking at as the youngest player in our 2026 team. And our best player in 2030. All right, so next question. So what's the best MLS homegrown in each of these categories? Goalkeeper, defense, midfielder, forward. Goalkeeper, David Ochoa. Defender, tie between Julian Araujo and George Bello. Midfielder, Kaden Clark. Striker, Ricardo Pepi. So all three great players. And then a consolation in midfield, I can put Moses Neyman there. Another great player.
Yeah.
Next up, from Jack Fritzadelphia. Who among the new Philly homegrowns will have the best long-term career? Easy answer, Brandon Craig. Brandon Craig is just, kid is great. I saw a clip today of him absolutely saucing players in the box in a practice drill. And this kid's like 6'3" and 6'4", still growing into his body and doing this. When this kid puts muscle on, he's going to be an insanely good center back.
How old is he now?
He's 16 now. He also has a European passport. So if a team comes asking, he's gone. I'm selling this kid for $4 million, producing the next Philly wave. Mm-hmm. Brandon's going to have the best career. No doubt.
That's encouraging because in that age group, we don't have a ton of center backs.
No, we really don't. That's a worry for that next World Cup cycle is center back, and being honest. Yeah. So next question, one that really tugs at the strings. How will the cancellation of the U20 and U17 World Cups affect the players in MLS this season? So it's going to affect the kids in a negative way who weren't going to get a lot of minutes. There's still kids in some teams that don't lean on youth as much or have top MLS players in those positions. Those kids need a Youth World Cup to get that exposure.
Yeah.
Now, for some of those kids who are playing in their consistent minutes, you're going to see a Brendan Aronson type who's going to keep that time with their clubs and it'll help them break out instead of missing a month and a half for the Youth World Cup. That does make an impact when you're getting minutes. So it's going to be a positive effect on that. But as a guy who watches the DA and watches these kids from 14 to 15 years old and on, seeing the World Cups get canceled was a heartbreaker. Those are just as important to me as the real World Cup. So now on to a guy who you're great friends with, Tactical Manager. So another YouTube guy, great channel, by the way. People should follow him. Who are the top MLS academies, the top three, and why? So first two, don't really have to explain it. FC Dallas, Philly. They produce players all the time. They scout players everywhere. Coaches are great. Players just don't do well in MLS. They get to the national team and to Europe. Don't really need to say anything else. They're a whole head above everyone else. Third one's going to be a curveball. My third favorite is LAFC. They're loaded with talent. So LA Galaxy for a while has kind of struggled to get those best kids to their team from numerous clubs in the area and then go further with those kids and get them minutes. LAFC has 3 or 4 amazing prospects per age group. They also have one of the best inner city scouting networks among any of the MLS clubs. And huge credit to Todd Saldana for that. Huge credit to Todd Saldana. They have a scouting network that no other club has in probably the most talent-rich area of the country.
Yes.
Also potentially going to be adding a USL team this year. So all of those talented kids are now going to potentially be getting pro minutes. So when you look at your Leones, your Eric Duenas, your Christian Torres, when you go to the younger kids, they're Diego Rosales, they're Robert Wilcots, they're Steven Ramirez, who's the younger brother of former USMNT forward Christian Ramirez. They're going to be getting these kids minutes now. And people are going to start turning their ears to an academy that is going to be huge. The honorable mention is Seattle. They're doing everything Philly and Dallas are doing, just not quite at the same production level. But they have another one that it's going to last a long time, and they're just going to keep pumping players out. Next one, Tackle manager asks another question. Thoughts on futsal being implemented in MLS Academies? So this was something that the DA actually did. They actually had every single year in the spring season, they would do a futsal league for these clubs. It was, I don't know if they mandated it, not too sure on that, but a lot of clubs actually participated in it.
Yeah.
I think it has to be implemented. So tactical manager is somebody who comes from a Brazilian background. Futsal is loved in Brazil. When I trained at Botafogo and Cruzeiro in Brazil, they constantly had these kids playing it all the time. Huge impact on culture, and it's how those kids are the most skillful players in the world. This is how you manage in those tight spaces. This is how your interplay becomes not just great, but world class, is developing in futsal. MLS Academies, realistically, I think, are probably going to implement this again, like the DA, because it worked great. They helped develop a lot of really skilled players. I think we're going to see it happen again.
Outside of academies, I also think it needs to be a staple for American kids. I mean, a lot of people talk about pay to play, what's the best way to get kids from poorer backgrounds who can't afford the game, or, inner city kids. The best way is to just build futsal pitches all over the inner cities in America. And I'm telling you, kids will play, and they don't need a coach with futsal. They just play. And that's how we'll create better players.
Build a futsal pitch. Don't put basketball hoops there.
Don't put hoops.
That is what I would suggest. Put it everywhere. You have places like Love Football, which is an organization that goes around the country and other countries and builds those type of football pitches. That's what needs to happen. That's how you develop those kids who are they're slick. They're saucy. They ooze that talent on the ball. That's how it happens. Futsal forces you to think quick, and if you're not a good dribbler, you're not a good futsal player.
Yeah. First touch, too. Your first touch in tight space of futsal is hard.
Matters. In futsal, you get that ball in half a second, the player's on you.
Yeah, exactly.
That's if you have futsal level space. So I think it has to be implemented in MLS Academies. I wouldn't be shocked to see them do it again.
I hope so.
Next up, Ray Del Empire asks, how accessible are MLS Academies to the youth? So with this, most MLS Academies actually do have places where you can go in and email academy directors and email scouts saying to go check out your games. So unlike most clubs, MLS Academies do not actually do tryouts.
Yeah.
They scout the players, and if you've impressed them or you've sent them, they've come to your game, then you did well, they'll invite you to train with their teams.
Yeah.
Then it's all up to you. Be better than the kids they have. If you are, you make it. If not, you still might make it, but you're probably just going to go college instead of going pro. Yeah. The other big notable thing about MLS Academies is that all of them are free. It doesn't cost.
Minnesota got rid of their academy, right?
Minnesota's doing a unique thing. They're essentially doing like a city all-star thing.
Yeah,
so I'll drive to games in the Midwest to watch the DA. Minnesota is actually on the schedule that's been sent to me. So they're essentially going to go to clubs and say, hey, club, what X amount of players do you want to play with us this week at the highest level? Then they'll send a couple kids. Do I like it? Absolutely not. It's what Houston used to do.
Yeah.
Houston wasn't That's why Houston wasn't very successful at developing talent. Yeah. Even though now Houston's kind of changed their ways, and they're another one who's just loaded with kids. They're gonna be a talent hub now. So next up, this question: is there anyone in the talent academies with Pulisic Geo potential? Kind of answered that already. Matthew Portman is the best one in my opinion. I'm going to keep it hidden from now, and especially the 06 age group. We have quite a few of them. The 05s have a couple as well.
Yeah.
We're not just producing better players, we're producing better volume of them. But the issue with becoming a Pulisic and Geo is they both had Euro passports. They got to Europe at 16. It makes a big difference. So that's why our American youth with European passports, that's why they're extremely valuable. When you look at someone with Bento Estrella, New York Red Bulls signed this kid at 14 years old because if they don't, he's going to hold out until he turns 16, and they're going to lose out on millions on this kid.
Yeah.
That's another one who has Pulisic and Geo potential, and because of his passport, is on that track.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he has to increase his soccer IQ to get there. But when you're as physically gifted as he is and you have his skill, it's easier to bet on him than it isn't. So, moving on from that, what kinds of players are we good at producing? What are we not good at producing? So, what we are good at producing is high IQ midfielders. We're pumping these out all over now.
Yeah.
U.S. soccer mandated that clubs play in 4-3-3s in the development academy. That's to teach them a very specific role in a soccer team, in an 11. We ended up producing a ton of 6s who know the game. We ended up producing a ton of 8s who know the game. We're even starting those younger age groups. We're starting to have a lot of 10s pop up who know how to play.
Yeah.
We also did a decent job of producing fullbacks and wingers. We have literally right backs just everywhere now. If you look in the men's national team, it's like we have like 10 of them who are good. They're everywhere. What we're not good at producing, strikers, notable, and center backs.
Yeah.
Which
is kind of it's kind of a problem. The guys who score goals and the guys who stop people from scoring goals.
Striker isn't just a U.S. issue.
Yeah.
You have some of the global powers producing strikers who just aren't very good.
Yeah.
That happens at a lot of big-time countries. Spain literally went into the Euro 2012 without a starting striker. And that was Spain, who was on fire at the time. They didn't have a starting number 9.
You know why I think that is, and this is just a theory. I haven't, actually really. Yeah. I think that what's happened is in Europe, they've gone away from street ball, where kids now go to a Manchester City academy. I kid you not, at 5 years old. They're getting coached. They're getting told how to play. And so what ends up happening is strikers are the guys who figured out how to get it done on the streets of Brazil or Argentina or Nigeria. And they have a swag and a confidence of like, they almost don't need to be taught the game. They have an instinct for it. Mm-hmm. But when you kind of teach and coach out that instinct and that creativity when they're 5 years old, you get to the top and you get a bunch of clones, right? A bunch of people who can play well within a system, very well within a system, but nobody who can pull something out of their pocket that no one's ever seen before and go, what is going on? And I think that is really crucial to the striker discussion.
It's very crucial. It's why you see a lot of African and South American strikers who are great. I mean, you had France won the World Cup with Olivier Giroud, who didn't score a single goal.
Isn't that insane?
Like, it happens. I think Greg Berhalter is kind of altering his system to fit Josh Sargent into that, because it's kind of how he plays. But like, we still, until we get to our 2005 age group, we're not loaded with strikers. We have Ricardo Pepi, who's really talented. Abroad, we have Malik Sanogo. I guess you can include Matthew Hoppe.
Yeah, I'm curious to see Hoppe. He'll get called up in the March camp, and I'm curious to see how he plays with the team. If he plays.
I still have issues about his ability on the ball. The kid can finish anything. Yeah. His run making is great. Still has to improve his touches. We're still not producing that many. Then you come down to like our 2007 group, where there's like 6 kids who are going to average like 40 goals a season this year. And it's like, how the heck are we getting so many of these? Like, they're popping up everywhere. It's not just one, we have 7 of them. So we're at least getting better there.
Yeah.
But that and center back is where we've had issues. Center backs generally take longer to produce, and they peak at older ages. I mean, Aaron Long could be playing in the Premier League right now, and he didn't get into the MLS until like 24.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes it's just a late bloomer position. That's one of them. So next up, we're going to skip that one because it's not really a question. How has pay-to-play impacted our youth system, and what can be done to abolish it? So the big issue with pay-to-play is that obviously kids from poor areas and from poor backgrounds, it's not as accessible to them. Now, you're also going to have a lot of inner city kids, especially where I'm from the Midwest, where soccer's not even on their minds.
No.
It's basketball, football. These kids haven't touched a soccer ball unless it's in gym class. They're literally forced to. But the issue that pay-to-play has is that you have a lot of Latin American communities, or you have poor white or Caucasian communities and things like that where they just can't afford it. And it's heartbreaking, and it's a shame.
Yeah.
So the sad thing is, realistically, it's never going to be abolished because running a club takes a lot of money.
I mean, to be clear, like you said earlier, MLS academies are free.
Yep.
Okay, so we're talking about 28, 29 academies that are free to go to.
Yep. And they are.
You know, we're a big country. There's a lot of kids, and they can't all live near an MLS club or an MLS academy, or even be good enough to be in an MLS academy, right?
And even in other countries, pay to play is still in some other countries. In Spain, you have the club's very highest teams. They're top, their juvenile A's, their juvenile B's, their cadets A's. Those teams, their very top academy teams, subsidized.
Yeah.
That it's pay to play for a lot of those
pay to play.
Even the big ones. So it's not just an American issue. The things that we can do about it, there's two big things. The first is training compensation. And that's making sure that these lower clubs can still get a little bit of money if they produce a good player.
Yeah.
Now, that's going to be great for some of these clubs. Issue with that is there's not going to be that many players that's going to so many clubs where you're going to be having literally everyone getting money from every part of the country.
No.
That's just, it's not realistic. The other thing that can be done is opening up the U.S. youth or soccer professional market and allowing communities to have professional teams. Because the biggest thing that you can do is have a professional team that's hopefully making money, that has enough of an income to subsidize a youth academy.
Yeah.
But just because everywhere can have a professional team doesn't mean every single one's going to be pumping out kids and pumping enough kids out on a consistent basis that they can justify spending millions of dollars on an academy.
Yeah. And the truth is, even if you have a professional team, there's no guarantee you're going to ever make enough money. I mean, professional teams are expensive, and it's hard to get fans. I mean, MLS can get fans, but even USL struggles to get fans.
It does. People don't realize how expensive it is. You have to pay coaches. You have to subsidize the players, and that's a huge expense. That's on top of paying out your players and the teams, paying out all your actual staff and things like that.
Yeah.
A huge cost. So it can be helped. The cost can be reduced over time.
Yeah.
It's never going to fully go away. I hate to say it because it is a huge issue, but it's never going to fully go away.
But I also think that the futsal thing would help because, to be honest, I'm not sure kids need to be coached before they're 12 years old. Not that much anyways. You know, I think kids, and you see this in LA, you know, a Mexican father, like they play in the parks, they play in the streets. And you know what? They'll bring their 9-year-old with them. And that 9-year-old, I watch this all the time in LA. They're pulling off tricks against grown men, 9 years old. And I'm like, that is a way better environment for him than to be yelled at by a coach to pass the ball to Johnny, you know, on Wednesday afternoons, even though he wants to dribble around half the team and score. So in some ways, I'm almost like, you know, so long as by the time they get to be 12, 13, they can get to an environment where they're getting professional coaching and they're, you know, working on their weaknesses, I'm fine with, you know, kids playing street ball. And I wish more kids would play street ball. And I wish kids in suburban areas would go to the park and just play in the park with their friends with no supervision, you know, or at least without a coach. You know?
I wish there was more things like an organization in Minneapolis called Joy of the People. So they were featured on the Scuffed podcast. What they do is they set up an after school thing of literally kids can go to them and just play unstructured soccer until until that place closes. Yeah. That is how you breed creativity.
Yes.
Allowing kids to work on their strengths, just play soccer, and just work on everything consistently at a high level.
Yeah. And figure out problems on their own without a coach joysticking the game. That's one of the biggest problems in youth soccer in America. Not just in America. It happens everywhere in the world. Everywhere I've coached, it's always been a problem.
Yep.
Always.
Literally everywhere it's a problem. They all want to make sure that they can get their player. their type of profile. That just happens. It's never going to change. So next question is from Jordan NatFan9, who I actually have enjoyed interacting with for a long time on Twitter. What do you think of the DC United Homegrowns? So he's talking about Moses Neyman, Kevin Paredes, and Griffin Yao, and asking about their floor and their ceiling. First one, Moses Neyman. Massive talent. What a kid.
Yeah.
Just like Paxton Pomykal. Just amazing player. Probably going to be on a Champions League team if he can put on a little bit of muscle to withstand the physicality of the men's game.
Yeah.
I love his game. Kevin Paredes. Not going to say Champions League talent, but Europe talent. Another physical player, wonderful on the ball, covers ground really well, high mentality, high IQ, just another great talent. Then there's Griffin Yao. Griffin Yao is pretty much Paul Arriola 2.0. Works his tail off, could be better on the ball, but his work rate is going to be good enough that he still can affect the game a little bit. But compared to Kevin Paredes and Moses Neyman, who are huge talents, he's not so much as a huge talent.
No.
He'll probably be an MLS lifer, be a DC United lifer, and be a player that every single person in DC knows of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So next one, on to Alexi Nanas. I do like that name. It's kind of funny. Next one. How do our youth prospects compare to those of elite national teams? So what's important for the elite national team is that you can get 23 players who are at a very high level.
Yeah.
We have the potential of doing that. We have the player pool. What we don't have compared to a France, an England, Spain, or a Germany is that for every one kid that we're producing, they're producing 3.
Yeah.
Now, that is because every single inch of their country is a soccer club at a very high level.
Yeah.
Or for us, every 2 hours in some areas, or is a soccer club at a high level.
Yeah.
And also, we have more sports competing. That does take away part of our player pool as well. Now, we're not going to get the linemen in NFL, the linebackers, people like that. But when you look at like your wide receivers, your running backs, your college basketball point guards, people like that, they have the physical profile that soccer players could be.
Yeah.
We lose all of those. Imagine what Steph Curry would be if he worked on his footwork his entire life.
Yeah.
Imagine if we had Steve Nash. Like, that's going to be an issue too. But
the advantage we do have, though, and it doesn't make up for where we lack, but we have a bigger population of 340 million people. So it's easier to develop, 23 or 56 or whatever, 120 elite level players when you have a bigger population. The other thing that we have is our sporting culture, right? America is a sporting country. Every Olympics, we're always in the top 3 for medals, right? When we take a sport seriously, as it looks like we're starting to do with soccer, we dominate. We achieve a lot. We're physical, we're athletic, it's in our blood, it's in our veins, it's in our culture, it's in our mentality. And I think that is going to help us compete better in soccer.
There's another thing too, it's that right now our development system is probably firing at 10 to 20% of what it could be.
Wow. Isn't that insane to think about?
Like, the big things, Europe, England, France, Spain, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, they have a system that's been the way it is for 100 years.
Yeah.
They can't really improve on what they have. They're going to keep improving. They're going to keep pumping kids out.
Yeah.
But it's not really going to get better. Brazil and Argentina, too. It's a very established system.
Yeah.
It's just the culture. USA is still learning our soccer culture. We're still having clubs realize they can develop players. We're still developing coaches learning from Europe and your South Americas. We're still having more and more clubs with access to professional levels popping up, thinking about youth development. We have 30 MLS clubs. We have another 60 USL clubs, and those USL clubs are learning to get academies. That's going to help us cover the country and get high-level coaching. So realistically, you have all these countries who are essentially peaking at what they can do. we're we're getting better and we're learning.
Yeah.
Like Mexico, like in Mexico, they're not going to get better at what they do. They have a very established system of how they develop players.
Yeah.
Mexico is struggling with players so much that most of their most talented prospects are literally coming from our academies now.
Yeah.
Like,
and even their guys, like if you look
Yeah.
at most of their under 23s, are still in Mexico, right? They're still playing in Liga MX.
yep.
And their generation is aging out. You know, the generation that's carried Mexico for the last 10 years has aged out. And the guys that they're producing aren't at the same level.
They aren't. The issue with that is that Mexican clubs don't quite let go of their players like we do.
Yeah.
And Mexican players don't often have European passports like ours do because they're not as big of a melting pot.
Yeah.
That does hurt them. It's great for us.
Yeah.
And they're not, and clubs from Europe don't look to them as much because of it.
Yeah.
So that's setting them back. And realistically, after 2022, it's not going to be a competition between us and Mexico.
No.
They're going to lose everyone. They're going to replace them with a subpar generation.
Yeah.
Or we lost a very good generation in the 2000s.
Yeah.
Replaced it with our lost generation. And now we have the DA group, who's amazing. And soon we'll have the MLS Academy generations start to fill in those gaps and really propel us. CONCACAF
Mexico is very lucky that they don't have to qualify for 2026, because I think if they did, they would struggle.
It is.
Especially with the rise of Jamaica and Canada and Curacao and Haiti and some of these CONCACAF teams that are starting to produce, not only produce, but also recruit better players from Europe.
And with recruiting, a lot of those clubs are going to get those best players from USA because we're going to be producing so many players that this is a guy who has Europe potential.
Yeah.
Is our 15th option at defensive mid or at winger. Looks to another country. That's going to happen.
Yeah. And then the next step after that is Americans with European passports playing for European clubs or European countries because they're not good enough to play for America. And that we're still a ways from there.
We are.
Unless you're talking about lower level countries like a Switzerland or a Bulgaria, something like that I can see.
Even in the youth national teams, like for Germany, we've had kids get called up to Germany who didn't make our teams. Noah Jones and Maxi Dietz for the current 2002 age group, they've been on German youth national team camps.
Yeah.
They didn't make our U17 World Cup team. They really didn't come that close.
Yeah.
It's gonna keep improving. We're still very much so a developing country.
Yeah.
Who has 10 years of soccer development. You could argue 5 when the pro clubs actually woke up, compared to teams who have 100.
Yeah.
And we're already doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
Just think of what gets better when we actually figure things out completely. So Alexi Nanas asks quite a few questions.
Yeah.
So the next one, how certain are you that the talent levels will continue to increase with each cycle? I will stake my life on it. If I'm wrong, you can come to Cleveland, to my building, drag me out into the street and beat me. I will stake my life on it. It's getting so much better. Like we said earlier, we're still learning how to actually develop talent. And now his final question, is MLS Next going to be as successful as the DA was? It's literally the same league.
Yeah.
The only difference is when the DA shut down, you had a couple clubs scramble and go, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? And move from the DA into the ECNL. Yeah. Over time, those clubs are going to move to MLS Next. Yeah. It's going to happen. They need the highest level for their kids.
Yeah.
It's literally no different. MLS Next is also going to provide for the MLS Academies, especially more international competitions, GA Cup, getting those kids to playing tournaments in Europe, Mexico, South America, things like that. They already were doing this, but it's going to happen more often now.
Yeah.
That's going to incentivize MLS clubs to look to those other MLS Next clubs for that best talent. Those teams that are not in the professional academies, they're going to be tapped into their youth markets. They're going to know who the best kids are. They're going to be trying to bring those kids in because their goal is to win games.
Right.
So It's going to be MLS Next is going to build on what the DA did, and it's going to improve from there. So now for another one. So the next question is KBA for life. Someone from the big soccer community on Twitter asked, who is the sauciest U17 winger in the pool? So there's two of them. So the U17 national team didn't have that many truly top wingers. The sauciest, in my opinion, was probably Leo Torres from San Antonio. When Jose Gallegos leaves, Leo Torres is the next up. After that, it's Felipe Valencia, who's the new 2005 homegrown for Inter Miami. And then the honorable mention is that LOSC Lille with Tim Weah is Kyle Alvarez. Kyle Alvarez is getting call-ups to the France youth national teams. We're competing with the kid with France.
Yeah.
Like, that should be a stay for what we're actually doing talent-wise. And he wasn't even a guarantee for our youth national team. That in mind. And then last question. Al Babs asks, could we ever be a great soccer country as long as high school and club keep taking away from each other? The answer is yes, we can. So realistically, in my opinion, if your heart is not set on playing professional or playing Division I, and you think maybe I don't have that talent or I don't have that desire, go play high school soccer.
Yeah.
Don't take that 10 months away when losing that experience of playing with your friends in your local community. Yeah. That is a huge sacrifice these top-level kids are taking.
And you're also taking a spot from a player who maybe wants that more, who wants to be a pro player.
Yeah, and realistically, there are cities where the best kids are still playing high school soccer. I live in Cleveland. St. Ignatius is one of the best high school soccer programs in the country. They could go to any city and roll over the best high school team there. They could probably compete with Internationals SC, who's in the area, and is the DA team.
Yeah.
St. Ignatius pumps out 3 to 4 Division I kids a year. Just happens. There's some cities that are like that. But if you look in an NYC area, you look in an LA, you look at most of our other big cities, now more kids are than aren't moving to the DA.
Yeah.
It still needs to get better. You still need some of these other teams to find a way to subsidize that top team.
Yeah.
You still need to tap into some of the inner city communities and bring those kids into your teams because there's a lot of players that were missing. I grew up in South Bend, Indiana. There was a huge Latino community, and those kids would come to our practices and they would dominate us.
Yeah.
But they couldn't quite afford the teams. So who knows what some of those kids could have done. Alan Rodriguez Lopez in Chicago Fire is an example of one of the kids from that area. He's not alone in his talent level. There's more of those. Yeah. And there's going to be kids from all over the country who are like that. So it's trying to find a way for those teams or for those kids to get there. But realistically, high school isn't going to take away much from the DA. You could line up the best high school team in the country against a lower tier development academy team. That development academy team is going to abuse the high school team. Yeah. They're even going to abuse the club teams.
And it's a big problem with high school. It's similar to college, where a lot of times the coaches don't really know. They're not soccer coaches. They're not licensed. They haven't studied the game. They're athletic coaches or they're teachers, and that's fine. But I watch high school soccer a lot and at all levels, or I did, not so much anymore. But when I was coaching, I used to, I used to go look at players, and high school was just lumping the ball down the field and then lumping it back the other way and everybody running. And it was disheartening to see. It just doesn't really seem to have a role in the development of American professional players anymore.
It's even like that at some of the club levels. It's not the DA. I went to a couple of TNL games in my area, and it was like you were saying, kids in what's considered the second best youth soccer tier were just lumping the ball down the field, just kicking and running. And then the next week, I go see Columbus Crew and Internationals playing. These kids at 13 years old are stringing together 13 to 14 pass sequences consistently and playing possession soccer at 12 to 13 years old.
Yep.
So realistically, a lot of the big MLS clubs are heavily scouting their local area. They're making a point out of it. But it's not going to have as much of an impact from high school taking away from club.
No.
But there's always going to be a couple who don't go to club. I mean, the number 1 draft pick this year, Andres Perea, he moved from Venezuela, I believe, Venezuela or Colombia. And he went to Roanoke, Virginia, played high school soccer, got scouted by Virginia Tech, then ended up being the number 1 draft pick. You're always going to have that situation in a country that is as big as ours and as populated as ours.
Yeah.
So it's going to happen, but I'm not too concerned with it impacting top-level soccer country long term.
Yeah. It really won't impact it that much. I mean, we have to remember Belgium, with a population of a few million, manages to create so many elite soccer players, or Holland, or, pick your small European country. When we get our development systems together, we don't need everybody to play soccer. We don't need even our quote unquote best athletes.
Yeah,
we need 30 million people to, a tenth of this country is into soccer, let's say. Like 30 something million people. That's all you need to create a top elite team in the world.
Uruguay has 1 city. Now they also have their best talent training with each other literally every single day from the day they're 11 to 18.
Yeah.
They have like a 5 million people country. I think that's their population.
Yeah.
It's the size of a couple cities in America.
Yeah.
They've made numerous semifinal runs. Imagine what we'll do when we actually figure our stuff out completely. And despite what people think, we are learning a ton and improving a ton and proving
at a very rapid pace.
If you look at what the U.S. soccer world was like, if you look at the youth national team rosters, even from 2013, a huge change has been made. And it's only going to improve quicker from there.
Yeah. David, this was really awesome, man. Thank you for coming on here. Guys, I hope you enjoyed these 2 videos series with David. David, tell people where they can find you. Obviously, Twitter, you have that.
You can find me dker0118 on Twitter. I tweet about U.S. soccer and youth prospects in particular. So if you want to learn a little more about who's on the come up, shoot me a follow. Love to have you on.
Do that. David, do you have a YouTube channel or a blog or anywhere else where you create content for?
I do create content for chasingacup.com. They're also able to follow along. And for anyone else who creates any content, I'd love to feature with you.
Guys, literally, when you talk about hyper-focused knowledge on youth national teams and youth players in America, David, along with a few other guys, is your guy. So if you want him to create for you, write for you, come on your channel, come on your podcast, do that, guys. It's well worth it. Have a fantastic evening, David, and I will talk to you soon.
You have a great one too, Pete. Thanks for having me on.